Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, a judge makes it official San Diego cannot move forward with its Plaza de Panama project. A tour bus from National City crashes on a mountain road. 7 are dead, and tonight there are questions about the company's safety record. And gas prices are zooming upward again, earlier than usual. What's behind this price spike?
I'm Amitha Sharma. San Diego's large Somali community is keeping a close eye on a federal courtroom where 4 Somali men are on trial, accused of supporting terrorism in their homeland. And some of the strongest voices in the debate over gun control are women's voices. Are guns a great equalizer for women in life-threatening situations? We'll have a look at the debate. KPBS Evening Edition starts now.
KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Erwin Jacobs and by
Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. It may be back to the drawing board for the Plaza de Panama project. A judge has finalized his ruling on a plan to close the heart of Balboa Park to cars because it violates municipal code. The code says the city can't touch an historic structure unless it's ruled to have no reasonable beneficial use. Now, the renovation plan included removing part of the Cabrillo Bridge, prompting a lawsuit from the Save Our Heritage organization. The ruling effectively kills the plan promoted by former Mayor Jerry Sanders and Qualcomm founder Erwin Jacobs. The city had hoped to have the project completed in time for Balboa Park's centennial in 2015. At this point, there's no word on the city's next move, though Mayor Bob Filner has said Soho and Jacobs have been in mediation before, looking for a compromise. We're learning more tonight about a San Diego company linked to a deadly tour bus crash in San Bernardino County. The company failed more than a third of federal safety inspections in the past 2 years. 7 people died last night when one of its buses flipped over, returning from a trip to Big Bear.
The violent crash 80 miles east of Los Angeles left State Route 38 littered with body parts and debris. More than 36 people were injured and at least 17 hospitalized. The bus was carrying men, women, and children from Tijuana. They were coming down the mountain after spending the day at Big Bear. That's when the bus rear-ended another car and flipped over, hitting a pickup truck.
There's still quite a bit that we don't know as far as how the incident itself happened. We do know that there's a bus and 2 vehicles that are involved, a pickup truck that had a trailer behind it and another smaller vehicle.
The bus turned sideways across both lanes with its windows blown out, front end crushed, and part of the roof peeled back like a tin can.
We do know that the vehicle, the bus, had rolled over, and there are some very significant injuries as a result of that.
At least 1 person was injured in the pickup truck. The bus driver survived and reportedly told investigators he had brake problems. Scapetus Magicus out of National City owns the bus. Federal transportation records show it had no crashes in the past 2 years, but flunked 36% of random inspections on its vehicles, in some cases for brake and tire problems. The CHP says it appears speed was a factor in the collision. Federal investigators will determine if mechanical failure or driver error was to blame.
Now, one passenger says the driver's plea to call 911 as the bus went out of control were futile because no one had cell phone reception in the rugged area. All the passengers on board are believed to be Mexican citizens. Gas prices have been spending the last week in the passing lane. Drivers at the pump paying $4 a gallon for regular. KPBS business and environment reporter Eric Anderson joins us from the News Center. So, Eric, looks like prices in Southern California are going up faster than any other part of the state. What's going on?
Well, Dwayne, prices quite simply are going up. Now, the average price of a gallon of regular just a few tenths of a cent under $4 a gallon this morning. That's according to the AAA fuel gauge report. A week ago, the price was hovering around $3.73 a gallon, and that's a surge of about 27 cents a gallon in just a week's time. California's average price running a few pennies behind, but don't worry, San Diego is now paying the highest prices in the state. Los Angeles and Orange County both have average prices that are about a penny or two higher than they are here at the pump. Prices may still be heading up as well. Now, the cost of fuel on the wholesale market is up 40 cents in the past 2 weeks. Retail prices only rose 30 cents a gallon during that same time.
Up, and up. So why are prices going up?
Well, that's a little tougher to get at. Prices typically climb from the beginning of the year through the summer driving period. This year, prices are spiking a lot earlier than usual. There are no unexpected problems at refineries, but Jeffrey Spring at AAA told me that a lot of refineries are producing less this time of year because they do scheduled maintenance. And he says it also doesn't help that international oil prices are ticking up, and there are investors that have entered the oil futures market looking to make a buck. That investor interest, of course, is helping fuel higher prices as well.
KPBS Business and Environment reporter Eric Anderson. Bonnie Dumanis is going back on the campaign trail, running for re-election as San Diego County's district attorney. She served 3 terms already and says while she was running for mayor last year, people kept telling Dumanis they wanted her to stay on as the county's top prosecutor. So far, no one is challenging her for the position. 4 men, including a well-respected imam at a San Diego mosque, are on trial in a federal courtroom downtown. They're accused of helping the Somali terrorist group Al-Shabaab. Amita Sharma spoke earlier to former federal prosecutor Sanjay Bandari and Abdi Mohammed, executive director of the Horn of Africa community.
Sanjay, who are the 4 Somali men on trial in San Diego, and what are they accused of?
They're 4 members of the local Somali community. One of them is from Orange County, but the 3 of them are from here. 2 of them are cab drivers. One of them was the imam of a local mosque that's frequented by the Somali community. One of them was an employee of a halal money transfer business called Shadal Express, and the records of that business will be important in the case, as the charge is providing material support to terrorism, and the material support in this case was money that the U.S. Attorney alleges was intended to support a foreign terrorist organization, Al-Shabaab, which was designated as a foreign terrorist organization in February of 2008.
And the wiretaps, which is the crux of the government's evidence, is actually those that were recorded back in 2008.
Yes, from late 2007 through about August of 2008. So they straddle the time period wherein Al-Shabaab was designated as a foreign terrorist organization. Some of the charges require that designation, have been in place, and some of the charges don't require that. So there are both types of charges here.
Abdi, I know that when these charges were first brought in 2010, the Somali community, the local Somali community, felt like they were being singled out. Since then, U.S. Attorney Laura Duffy has really reached out to the community. How confident are local Somalis that these 4 men are receiving a fair trial?
I think to a great extent the community is very much appreciative and know that these men will get a fair trial. And U.S. Attorney has held several meetings where, with the community where there was a dialogue took place, and the U.S. Attorney basically talked about the system and how it works and how transparent it is, and that they are not politically motivated, and that the community is not being targeted. And so I think that helped a great deal. But to family members of these defendants, obviously they're going to be very anxious, and they have to get to see, and we'll see what comes out. But they're very nervous.
Sanjay, the crux of the government's case here is based on these secretly recorded conversations, wiretaps. And I believe 2 of the defendants are Basali Moaleen and Ahmed Mohamud. Moaleen is heard, according to these wiretaps, telling Mohamud that money is needed for the young men who are firing the bullets. How big of a hurdle are these wiretaps for the defense?
Well, for Basali in particular, who's recorded far more frequently than the other defendants, it's a very compelling case painted by the wiretaps. There are a number of issues presented. So clearly, if the wiretaps are credited, they come in as the U.S. Attorney says they would, then that will be most likely lead to a conviction. But we have 4 defendants here. And so we have to look at the quality and quantity of evidence against each one of them. If the evidence against Basali is extremely compelling, he's on many, many recordings being very explicit, then when you have far more nuanced and cryptic communications, and that's all you have as to some other defendants, that can be the situation where a wiretap actually cuts against your case against another defendant. You also have the problem here that the wiretaps are all in the Somali language. They're not in English. The jurors obviously don't speak Somali, so they're going to have to be translated. That process takes away some of the power of playing the defendant's own words in court. It also raises issues of mistranslation, which are, and so in addition to the usual issues when you play wiretap evidence of taking evidence out of context, you just played this first part of the call. What about the last part of the call where maybe the defendant said something that raises some doubt about what their true intention was?
And the defense is going to bring all of that up in court. Abdi, I want to talk to you. You know, the Somali community is known for sending money back home. And I want to know, how big of a damper has this case put on that activity, given the fact that, you know, these 4 guys are accused of sending money to Somalia, albeit to a terrorist group, but has it put a chill on that?
Well, yes. Well, ever since September 11 occurred, there has been a whole series of laws that the federal government has enacted, which provided people sending money to be much more transparent for their to know who's really sending money. But after that, I think, you know, the U.S. Attorney, you know, they've made it very clear that folks that are just sending money to their family, that will not be hampered at all. It's just that people that are sending it to organizations that are banned, you know, or designated as terrorist organizations. So in that sense, it has not had you know, a lot of effects. So people can still send money to their families.
Abdi, Sanjay, we're going to have to wrap it there. We'll continue to watch this trial. Thank you.
Thank you.
Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano came to San Diego this afternoon. Fronteras Desk reporter Jill Replogo covered the visit and joins us now. So, Jill, what was the focus of Napolitano's visit today?
She's on a 2-day tour of the U.S.-Mexico border. This is her first stop. She took a helicopter tour of the San Ysidro Port of Entry and the Otay Mesa Port of Entry. She met with a bunch of state and local and federal law enforcement officials who work on the border. And she's here to talk about immigration reform and border security.
And did she...
I believe the border is secure. I believe the border is a safe border. That's not to say that everything is 100%. You can never, and it would be unrealistic, and no one, I think, using common sense would say you will eliminate all crime, all illegal immigration. There's no city in the United States that has no crime, and yet most people believe they live in a fairly safe city or safe city.
And did she have anything, because this was a visit to San Diego and El Paso, did she compare the two?
No, she didn't. Mostly she was here to, we can say, to stump for immigration reform. She said she supports President Obama's proposal as well as the group of senators who's working on a proposal for immigration reform. She said that it needs to go hand in hand with border security. She basically, as you heard, thinks that we've gone as far as we can with border security, but that we need to reform the legal immigration system at the same time.
Fronteras Desk reporter Jill Replogo. President Obama went on the road today, campaigning for his gun proposals. Women are emerging as a force on both sides of the ongoing debate. Amitha Sharma is in for Peggy Pico tonight with more on this story.
As Washington mulls over tighter gun control laws, some women are equating gun rights with women's rights. Joining me is Ronnie Schreiber, San Diego State University political science professor and author of the book Writing Feminism, Conservative Women and American Politics. Before we talk, Professor, I want to play some sound bites from last week's launching of the gun control debate in Washington.
Guns make women safer. Over 90% of violent crimes occur without a firearm, which makes guns the great equalizer for women. The vast majority of violent criminals use their size and their physical strength to prey on women who are at a severe disadvantage. In a violent confrontation, guns reverse the balance of power.
It will be hard, but the time is now.
Professor Schreiber, I just want to start out with the facts first. The proposed legislation by President Obama, who's actually campaigning for it in Minnesota today, does nothing to impede a woman's right to purchase a gun and use it to defend herself, correct?
Correct. That is, his proposed legislation is mostly has to do with increasing background checks and some restrictions on military-style weapons.
And yet, as we saw in the sound bites, Gail Trotter of the Conservative Independent Women's Forum appears to be equating gun rights with women's rights. What's the strategy here?
Well, it's basically, we typically think of women's issues as being more feminist issues. And so part of the strategy that Gail Trotter is using is to say that conservative issues are also women's issues, and that conservative women have a perspective on issues that may be different from what we typically think of feminists think of the issues. So she really came to that hearing to speak as a woman on behalf of what she understands women's interest to be in this gun debate.
And how is this strategy working with women? Is it appealing to them?
Well, I haven't seen any shift from there in terms of public opinion. Thus far, public opinion would show that she's not really on the side of women's public opinion in terms of whether or not there should be complete access to a variety of weapons, and whether or not we should have armed guards in school and so on. Mostly women favor restrictions on those things. So from a pure public opinion point of view, she's basically not speaking on behalf of the majority of women right now. However, she's the only person during that hearing that was actually speaking as a woman. Obviously, Gabrielle Giffords is a female, but Trotter was actually making the argument that this is a woman's interest or issue, and here's why. And she was the only one that was doing that. So I think that has some kind of sway, at least among lawmakers. They can use it to legitimize their position, saying women want this.
And, we often don't hear women getting involved in the gun control debate. And yet, there are some gun statistics that are extremely pertinent to women. For instance, women are 3 times as likely, if they live in a home with a gun, are 3 times as likely to be a victim of homicide than a woman who doesn't live in a home with a gun. And women are more likely than men to be killed by a spouse or a partner. So again, it seems like it could be a very effective strategy, or the start of a very effective strategy.
Absolutely. I mean, there really are data to show that what you're just saying, that women are more affected by gun violence in certain circumstances than men are, so in particular with guns in the home. And so, to build on the data that you just gave, basically with homes that have guns in them, women are less safe as opposed to more safe because of the domestic violence issue. So the feminist group, the National Organization for Women, for example, actually made a statement to that effect, saying, they support the Obama legislation because of this. Of course, again, it does beg the question whether or not the Obama legislation will put a stop to any of that, because probably most of those guns are also handguns. So
exactly,
yeah,
and
it needs to go further from their perspective.
So there was a Pew poll that came out recently, and actually there's some divisions between how men see gun control and how women see gun control. And women do tend to support more gun restrictions than men do. Women, by contrast, prioritize controlling gun ownership. They view this as more important compared with 38% of men who prioritize gun rights. Are women also not protected by tighter gun laws? I mean, it's hard to tell at this point, correct?
Right. Yeah, it is hard to tell. I mean, I think again, we've talked about these statistics about domestic violence, and so if there were more restrictions maybe on other types of weapons, or maybe greater background checks or something like that, or if included in background checks were the inability to sell weapons to people who have had restraining orders taken out against them, who had had any kind of prior conviction of some kind of a domestic violence activity or something along those lines. And maybe that is in the legislation, or that's already in place, but maybe it needs greater enforcement or more kind of universal attention.
And we're going to have to wrap it there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Refugees in City Heights are getting help from a state lawmaker. They've been campaigning to get better translations at clinics and hospitals. They say poor translations have led to incorrect prescriptions, diagnosis of conditions, even incorrect surgeries. Assembly Speaker John Perez plans to introduce legislation to improve access to medical interpreters by having the state get federal health reform dollars to pay for it.
I'm Jeffrey Brown. On the next NewsHour, President Obama takes his plan to stem gun violence on the road to Minnesota. That's Monday on the PBS NewsHour.
In the world of development, smart growth means building compact and walkable neighborhoods. San Diego has a 20-year history of building smart growth communities, but do they live up to their high ideals? KPBS reporter Tom Fudge gives us a look at 2 examples.
This Green Line trolley station is Rio Vista, and this is the center of Rio Vista West, just a few dozen yards from the station. In San Diego, you can't find a neighborhood more closely connected to a light rail stop. Mike Stepner worked with the developer in the 1990s when he was the San Diego city architect. He says the transit link was one of the founding principles of Rio Vista West.
Transit-oriented, tied to the trolley station that was coming, that it would have a mixture of uses, residential, office, housing, and it would be a village in some way.
In many ways, Rio Vista West, located in Mission Valley, is an urban village. In the central promenade, first-floor shops serve the apartments above. Adjacent streets are cozy and well-landscaped. The trolley gives residents a handy link to downtown, Old Town, and San Diego State.
It turned out very well. I think that these kinds of projects and the new kind of thinking evolve. So there are details or things here that I think that we would have envisioned a little bit differently, that the plan called for a little bit differently.
So how did the plans evolve as they were put into place? Where did the smart growth end up being not so smart? Stepner says the development's commercial district turned into a suburban mall with a huge exposed parking lot. The street that separates the residential from the commercial areas was supposed to be lined with homes and shops. Today it's not. That street also ended up a lot wider than Stepner expected.
It doesn't need to be this wide to carry the kind of traffic that comes through here, and the lanes are very wide. So even if I'm living here and I want to walk across the street to the Kmart or something else, the street is, is a long walk.
Let's just say Rio Vista West gets some mixed reviews. Now let's take a look at another development that wanted to be more than just another suburb.
This community, 4S Ranch, is right across the I-15 from Rancho Bernardo. About 15 years ago, it was in the planning and permitting phase, which I covered as a reporter. The developers were selling this as a new kind of suburb with old-fashioned sidewalks, parks, and a downtown you could walk to. In short, it was going to be a small town in the middle of the suburbs.
That vision is seen today in a lot of the residential areas. Driveways don't dominate the streetscape, and landscaping invites people to use the sidewalks and the fronts of their homes.
It was a tremendous step up where we had the landscaping and the parking between the street and the pedestrian. The houses actually fronted onto streets and backed onto alleys rather than being garden apartments that were turned around. You didn't know where were the fronts and where were the backs.
The downtown of 4S Ranch did also materialize with businesses like a hardware store and a Ralph's Grocery. But while planners imagined a walkable downtown with a main street, what residents got was a shopping mall with isolated stores and huge parking lots. The street signs here almost look like a parody of what was once imagined. Mike Rust is with Newland Real Estate, which owns the developer of 4S Ranch. He said plans for a downtown Main Street fell apart when they began to court retailers.
So we were trying to get mixed uses that all fit together in that center court. Unfortunately, when we went to the marketplace in 2004, the retail developers were not, it was a program that wasn't going to work for them.
The defining characteristic of smart growth is walkability. It's giving people a place where it's safe and convenient to walk to common destinations so people can encounter their neighbors and get a little exercise. Speak to residents of 4S Ranch and they will stand up for the place. Vicki Schlarb calls Forest Ranch hometowny. Here kids really can walk to school.
We have an elementary, junior high, and high school all within walking distance of most of this area.
Bernard Mariano, on the other hand, is not impressed by the town center.
Like you said, if it's walkable, it's not sidewalk friendly. You know, something to think about. Speed bumps, something to think about. Visible walkways for drivers and pedestrians, something to think about.
Howard Blackson says new developments like this illustrate the challenge of smart growth, which he calls new urbanism.
The new urbanism actually is a great name because it is new. It's not the old urbanism where there was no car. It's the idea of that traditional neighborhood, that traditional city with the car. And what you have to do is put the car in its place.
We seem to have a schizophrenic relationship with the car. We hate traffic, we hate parking lots and urban sprawl, but nearly all of us have a car, and it's hard to know how to put it in its place. But put simply, new urbanism says cities should be built for people, not for cars, even if that means we have to spend a little more time and a little more shoe leather getting around. I'm Tom Fudge, KPBS News.
Well, we've got some cloudy weather moving in for the next couple of days. Coastal temperatures will be mostly in the 60s. We'll see a cool down as the week goes on. Rain is expected in the mountains by Thursday. We could see it on the coast and inland by Friday. Till then, partly sunny in the desert. You can find tonight's stories and download the KPBS app all on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. You have a great night.